All right, we are live. Jeremy, how you doing?
I am back from Melbourne, so I'm still tired and a little bit, still some jet lag going on, but yeah,
You know
I'm
what you
good
need?
though. I'm good.
You need yourself Diet Dr Pepper. This is. I feel like I'm
I've
doing a
got
marketing pitch for, but yeah.
I've
Okay.
got a cherry Coke Zero,
All right.
which
You do
are
good.
amazing, by the
Yeah.
way.
So you're like an old man.
I
You
just
drink zero.
I just
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
are you kidding me? I
Yeah.
drink 3 cups of coffee every morning. If I drank any more caffeine, well, I guess there is quite a bit of caffeine in there. But the
Yeah.
sugar, I don't know. Who knows? I don't know. I told you I'm a little bit jet lagged still. So hopefully in
It's
in
yeah.
like 2 or 3 weeks I'll be back to my normal schedule.
I totally understand. I'm doing okay. Uh, you know,
Oh yeah, how are
it,
you doing, by the way?
Well, Dave, I appreciate you asking. I figured you weren't going to get to it, so I just say it. I did. I did when I came home. I made myself stay up. I was telling you earlier that I went. I went with the family, went to church on the next morning, and I was. I mean, I could. Boy, I felt bad. And then, but that was. Then we spent the day with the family, and then I'm doing all right. Got a good night's sleep that night. I passed out Sunday night. Sunday night just dead to the world. So. But I'm doing okay. What we're talking about, if you missed it, Jeremy and I were both in Australia last week for Serverless Days. I've got the shirt on. I'm representing here. Serverless Days ANZ.
ANZ.
Yeah, which
Right.
in America that's Z. So just so you know
That's a
that
Z.
you're confused.
Yep.
Yeah.
Translate it.
Yeah, but we're not going to talk about serverless days today. We probably will a little bit,
Nope.
but we are here to talk about Jeremy's new project, new company, new everything for you, right? It's a lot of newness, and so we're going to be talking about Ampt now. Before we get in, I'm super excited to see a demo. By the way, we've got some folks coming in saying hi. So yeah, tell us where you're coming in from. If you throw that in the chat, I'd love to see it. If you have questions, the way this works, this is a very casual show. We chat, we show demos. We always like to show demos. If you have questions, throw them in the chat, and I will ask Jeremy. I have no problem interrupting Jeremy. Jeremy, much like myself, if he's talking, you have to interrupt to get a word in, just like with me. So we will be interrupting each other all day long. So,
speaking of interrupting, Eric, if I can just no, sorry.
Well played. I saw that coming, though. That was predictable.
Yeah, so. I knew it was telegraphed. I telegraphed.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, what I'd love to do is, first of all, tell us who you are and tell us what Ampt is.
Yeah. So I'm Jeremy Daly. I've been doing tech now for 25 plus years. Got into the cloud 2009 and started building stuff on EC2 and all of that, amazing cloud infrastructure that existed way back when. And then when Lambda went GA in 2015, I started playing around with it and just absolutely fell in love with that paradigm of serverless and what I thought, sort of could be the future of computing. And so I got involved in that and basically have dedicated the last, 7-8 years of my life to just, the pursuit of serverless nirvana and trying to figure out how we can make this accessible for more people. And so a couple of years ago, I joined Serverless Inc. And we started a project called Serverless Cloud. And essentially what Serverless Cloud was, it was this, PaaS sort of system that let you build apps really, really quickly, and everything was serverless behind the scenes and so forth. We got a lot of great responses to that. The feedback on the developer experience, which is super important to me, was really, really great. And it just grew, and we decided to spin it off as a separate company and kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit and sort of take all that learning that we got from Serverless Cloud and build this new project called Ampt. So I'll tell you about Ampt in a second. Again, I am pretty involved in the serverless space. I was at Serverless ANZ last week. I've got my newsletter offbynone.io. That's a weekly newsletter all about serverless. The podcast is a little bit on hiatus right now, but serverlesschats.com do that. And I'm an AWS serverless hero, so I've been able to work with a lot of really, really great people, and I just love this community. So serverless, near and dear to my heart.
I'm going to interrupt you there. So
go ahead.
Here I come right here. Yeah. So, and I would just echo that. Yeah, Jeremy's been a kind of a pillar, if you will, in the serverless community for a long time. You were, if not the first, one of the first serverless heroes, right?
I came in 2019, so there's a few before me. Yen Trey, the Burning Monk, was I think he was at the end of 2018, but it was early in that time. Ben Kehoe, I believe, was 2000. He might even been 2017.
Yeah, Ben Kehoe, he was a serverless hero before there was serverless. So yeah,
I think that's true, right? Yeah, no, I mean, and that was the great thing for me was like I was a huge fan of the Burning Monk and Ben's and all the other people that were starting to write and do stuff in that space, and that's really what motivated me, to start writing and sharing a lot of what I was working on, and so I mean, it's been great. I've been to so many Serverless Days conferences now and reInvents and things like that, and met so many amazing people that I just love it.
How many serverless days? Because you keynoted ANZ. I just like saying that. You keynoted the one last week. How many have you keynoted?
I did the keynote at Serverless Days New York last summer. Before that, I did the keynote at Serverless Days Milan. In 2019. Yeah, 2019. I was supposed to keynote Serverless Days Helsinki in 2020, but that whole trip got canceled as the thing happened. But I know I spoke at Serverless Days Cardiff. I didn't keynote, but I spoke at Serverless Days Cardiff, Serverless Days Belfast, Serverless Days Boston. I helped organize.
Just everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, just a lot. I mean, but again, it's just amazing. If you've never been to a Serverless Days conference, you have to go to one. There's one in Paris coming up. There's one in, I think the Cardiff one's coming up again, and a couple of others. So check those out if you can get to one, because it is an amazing learning experience.
So there is
and meet some cool people.
And I'll make sure I'm going to add it right now here. Make sure I have it. Serverless Days.io, right?
Serverlessdays.io, yes. And they have an updated schedule of the ones that are coming out there as well. Oh, I see Matthew Napoli is on there. Shout out to Breath 2.0.
Yeah, that's right. Just released, Matt. I saw that. Yeah. So that's really exciting. If you're not familiar with that, Matthew Napoli has been working on Breath for quite a while. That's PHP in Lambda. And Matt and I met actually in Moscow. We were, believe it or not, many years ago, we were speaking, and he was showing, this is kind of a funny story. He was speaking on how to get PHP to run in Lambda functions. And this was pre-custom runtimes.
Yes.
So it was a really cool session. And then as soon as custom runtimes came out, I was like, Matt, have you seen this? So Matt's a really sharp guy, does a lot of great work. So super excited to have you here with us as well, Matt. All right. So I know I'm rattling on, and I know people are not here to hear me talk, which breaks my heart a little bit, but that's where we're at. Tell us, or we kind of talked about Ampt, but we want to see Ampt. Are you ready to share your screen?
Yeah, go ahead. You can share bring it on there.
Yeah, show us. So this is not a lot of folks have seen this yet, right?
No. So actually, pretty much nobody has seen the actual inner workings of Ampt. So we just started letting a few people into the private beta. So the team has spent a lot of time working on the behind the scenes thing. And anybody who's a developer probably knows this, where it's like, the front end developers get all the credit, right? The ones, the stuff you can actually show. And when it comes to really, the what Ampt does, the back end is really where there's a ton of power. So we spend all that time and energy getting the back end to a point where we're really comfortable with it. We're pretty excited about what the capabilities are right now. We've got a whole bunch of other ones that we're going to be adding, and we've slapped a couple of UIs up there for now, but we've got a lot of polishing to do on that. And really, what the interesting thing is about what we're doing with our private beta is really an opportunity to understand and learn from the people using it how they want the interface to work, because the underlying architecture is incredibly powerful, can do a lot of really, really neat things, and make life super easy. But the developer experience really is where we want to put that polish and that sort of shine on it, or sheen, whatever the right saying is. But so that's sort of what we're working on as part of the private beta, is to get some feedback, obviously, on the underlying system as well, but also sort of that interface in terms of how people use this thing. Because again, we are essentially a developer platform, and the goal is to get out of your way, just to let you build and develop stuff like you normally do, and not have you sort of deal with all these complicated configurations or have to struggle with infrastructure. So that's sort of the idea behind what we do, and I can just jump in and we can start sort of seeing how this thing works if we want to do that.
See, you got Matthew Bonnig yelling "Go Ampt."
Oh, there we go. All right,
yeah, Matthew's yelling, which he's our our resident CDK expert, and he spends probably 40% of his life hassling me. So just so you know, you're on his radar.
And listen, I'm excited about it. Actually, I'm really excited about what Monado. Anyways, Winglang, what Winglang is doing, I think it's just super exciting for people to just reimagine how we build applications in the cloud. And that's really one of the things that we're trying to do at Ampt as well. I think there are a number of different approaches to this. And so it'll be interesting to see how these all play out. And I think there'll eventually be a lot of, learning between all the different approaches, and in a couple of years maybe we come up with something that is sort of a silver bullet. I don't think we're going to be there yet, but anyway, so just quickly talking about Ampt. So the idea behind Ampt really is to give you an interface to the cloud that doesn't require you to understand or know all the inner workings and how everything gets wired together. You still need to understand the basics of cloud computing. You still need to understand how distributed systems work. You still need to understand databases and code and things like that. But you don't have to worry about how you wire those things together. You can just sort of express your use cases. So again, once you sort of have access to Ampt, you just go into an empty directory, you type in Ampt like this. And what this will do is this will go ahead and connect you to a personal developer sandbox for you. So I'm going to use my demo org here. Couple different options for some base templates. One of the things we're trying to do with Ampt that's a little bit different than how we approach serverless cloud is we want you to use whatever you're super familiar with, right? So if you're an Express developer or you use Astro or Next.js or any of these things, we literally want to get out of your way. So you just bring that code with you and it will work. But the difference between you taking that and trying to deploy that to some containers or something like that is you literally just focus on your code, and we'll make sure that it gets deployed to the cloud in a way that is the most cost effective, the most performant, as well as secure and compliant and all those other things that you're going to want to check off, scalable and so forth. Anyway, so I've got a new app that I'm creating here, and it's going to say, what do you want to do? I'm just going to start with this JavaScript API option. I'll name the app demo. And then this will go ahead and install a couple of quick dependencies. And you'll see over here, what this is doing is essentially generating this index.js file. For some reason, this always is slow when it goes to highlighting the colors for me, but the syntax highlighting. But anyway, so this is just a regular Node app. So if you sort of hide this piece here and you just look at, you're bringing in Express, you're bringing in Router, you create an app with that. It's all just, this is nothing. I'm not going to teach you how to use Express, because if you know how to use Express, you know how to use this.
Something we've probably all seen, or something like it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And again, any Express, this is Express. So this is your version of Express. The thing that we're doing right now is we do have this little helper called HTTP that we bring in from our Amp SDK. And essentially what that does is we just wrap your app with this use node handler thing. We're going to, again, this is also sort of the experimental part of the interface and the best way to do this. We think we're probably going to just build this in. So you just drop your Express app in, and we'll automatically add this, use node handler for you. But essentially what this is doing, right, is pretty simple. It went ahead and it created a private API and a public API with a couple of get routes, a post route here. And then it just is using, the API or app.use. So basically what it's doing is creating an endpoint /API/hello/admin/hello. And what you can see that it did down here is it connected us to this personal sandbox. So I'm going to go ahead and open this personal sandbox in a URL here. And this is going to just load this default page. All right. And essentially this default page, as it explains here, is just the, where does it say somewhere? Oh, static/index.html. So over here in the static folder, I have this index.html file. Now, what you probably realize about this here is if I just type in let's type in hello Ampt. Maybe capitalize it. And I save this, all right? This immediately syncs and is available. And essentially this will just load HTML files, images, whatever static assets you have. So if you wanted to create a static site with Ampt, you don't have to do any programming at all. You can just drop it into the static folder. And this gives you everything, CDN, everything you need, caching, all that stuff's all built in for you. But that's just immediately available. So this, by the way, is 100% running in the cloud, right? So there's no local thing running that is trying to emulate something or trying to pull in different features. It just runs in the cloud for you. So I'm going to just, so again,
right, I'm going to stop you there. I want to make sure I understood that for a second.
Yeah.
This runs in cloud. So you're right now, and you don't have to give away your secret sauce if you don't want to, but so you said that's the current Hello Amp that is not being generated from, I see it, amp.app. It's actually coming from your domain.
You're in the cloud. You're in a cloud sandbox. And look, we are 100% transparent with this. This is running on all AWS architecture. This is actually running in a Lambda function. But one of the really cool things that we do, and I'll show you this quickly, is so if we go back to this index.js file, so /API and hello, and I don't know why we built this app to be a little bit convoluted, but essentially if we do public, was it public?
No, we're developers. That's what
we're developers. We're like, let's see how complex we can make our, so /API /hello, like this. So this will go ahead and return hello from the public API, right? Pretty simple. Okay, now here's what's super cool about the way that Ampt works. So now you're over here, you've got this public, you've got this URL that's running, right? And you go in and you say, you know what? I actually want to make a change here. And I want this to say hello from let's say hello from Ampt. So I'm going to type in Ampt here. Now I haven't saved it yet. You see my dot right there. Okay. So the second that I save this, I hit save, it syncs, and it's immediately available for you. We actually can sync code. So here's the crazy thing. Our target was less than a second. I've been seeing like 200 millisecond syncs. All right, that's how fast this is, right? So I'm making changes to my app, and it is syncing instantaneously to a cloud environment that gives me all these capabilities, right? So again, I'm going to just do something simple here so that we can sort of see how some of this works. Let me switch over to Insomnia here. I'll create a new request. And just do this. So if I create my get requests, I'll put this to this endpoint hello. I hit send. I'll see hello from Ampt. If we change this into a post like this, and I change this to admin, right? Because that was the URL. And I go ahead and hit send. It's going to tell me that it's unauthorized, right? But if I just go ahead and here and again, this was just simple auth. So I'll just go ahead and put a bearer token in and I'll call it test. That's all I was looking for. I hit send and now it cannot get hello. Why not? What did I do wrong? I did something. Hello, it was admin, right? /admin /hello. And I did something wrong.
That's all
anyways, listen, it's a live demo. Anything's possible.
What we do.
Why did
I can't tell you how many times I've followed up this show with a tweet saying, "Here's what I did wrong."
I did wrong.
We'll be glad to do that.
I'm sure I'm doing something here, but anyways, I don't know why that post isn't working. But the basic idea here is that again, you get this environment instantaneously, and it's super cool. Now I'm going to go ahead and clear out most of this because this is just a bunch of stuff that we probably don't need.
While you're clearing, can I ask you some questions?
Yes, go ahead.
And if you have questions out there in the audience, if you in the audience have questions, so when this spun up, so did this spin up a new Lambda function to run it, or is it running in like a general Lambda that's kind of responding with that?
So you actually have a completely isolated AWS account for every sort of version of your app that you're running. So if you connect to this, you'll get your own AWS account with all your own resources. Everything will just be built in for you. And I'm just curious, by the way, I'm going to test this while I'm
Imra's out there saying it should have been a GET request, but he did the GET request first, Imra.
Nah, I did the GET request, Imra. I was trying to do the
don't think you know us, Imra.
Right.
You left me stranded in an airport for over an hour and a half. Don't even get with me right now.
So everybody gets their own stuff, and it's completely isolated, right? And actually I can jump over here now and sort of show, if I go here, I see my demo app here. I think I just actually start instead of click on it. And then I see that I have this Jeremy sandbox, right? So everything is named after your username, but I can create, so we haven't enabled previews or permanent stages yet, but essentially you can go ahead and share this as a preview, which would be a completely isolated environment. You could also share it or also publish it to a permanent instance like staging or prod or something like that. But what's cool is that you get metrics, all kinds of things like that. And there's a few things we haven't added back here. But I want to show you a couple of the interfaces that we do enable to sort of give your app superpowers. So one of the things we do is, again, this is just bringing in, oops, back here. Make this a little bit bigger so we can see. So this is just bringing in Express. I don't actually need router anymore because I'm just using the plain Express thing. And again, you can see that little checkbox. Whenever I make a change and you save it, that little checkbox that tells you that you're synced. So I just created an endpoint called test here. So I'm going to bring in another thing called Params. So the idea behind,
I'm sorry, you pointed.
I'm sorry. Okay. So this little thing, right? See that little star right there? Okay. So I just added Params there. So when I hit save, watch right here. I hit save, that spins, that's synced, just like that, instantaneously synced, right? So you're done. So anyway, so this parameter thing is pretty cool. So if you go in, I mean, this is one of the things, like what we try to do is look at all of the things that are pains when you're building serverless applications. Like, how do I get parameters? How do I share secrets? Some of that other stuff. So just an easy one, for example. So if I go ahead and add a new parameter here, and I'll just call this, let's call this Sam. And I'm going to give it a value of hello from Ampt. Like this. Okay, so I created this parameter, and you create parameters at the app level. And then what happens is when you actually go into your instances, then those parameters actually inherit, right? So this is inherited here, and of course I can override this at this individual level if I want to. And essentially what this parameter thing gives you is the ability for you to, and I know I should be programming in TypeScript, so I look like I know what I'm doing. But anyways, so you can go ahead here. So. Right, exactly. Yeah. So you go ahead and use params, right? And then you can just go ahead and call what you want in here. So I'm going to say call param Sam, and I'll do test like this so we can see it. I hit save, it's instantaneously synced, and I come over here, make this request, and it says hello from Ampt. Now, this is the cool thing about parameters. One, I can override them, right? Easy enough to do. So if I want to jump over here and I say, you know what, this Ampt parameter, I actually want to override this because this should be hello from, let's say hello from Eric, and we'll save this. The second that I save that, all right, as soon as that accepts that change, then what happens is that is actually pushed out live to my application. So I refresh this, and it says hello from Eric, right? So this is what's really cool. You could have 100 developers all working on this application. They all have their own system or their own version of this running. They don't have to worry about resource contention, whatever. If somebody goes and says, oh, by the way, we rotated the secret for some API that everybody's sharing, whatever, you go ahead and make that change. That populates to every single instance instantaneously without rebooting or redeploying or anything like that. So just a super handy thing that you can use. These are all 100% encrypted, by the way, so you don't have to worry about, you can use them for secrets if you want to, like API keys or other types of credentials, or you can just use them as sort of like, plain text type things. And we have some cool things where you can export some of them if you wanted to. If you wanted to do params.export like this, then you can actually select the ones that you want to export to, just export to your process.env for you, right? So just make it super simple if you have some things like that you need to do. All right, quickly want to show you a couple other ones because there are some really cool things happening here. So the other thing that we have sort of built in is a couple of features that we use. Here's the way that we think about it. We want to make sure that you have access to the things that are sort of like that you just need, it doesn't really, you don't have to worry about making choices. Like maybe that's a good way to say it. So one of the things that we built into our system is this idea of eventing. And events are important because you need to make sure that you can send, delayed requests that you and I love the storage first pattern, things like that. Right. So let's say that you wanted to go ahead and, we'll just use this test thing here, but you can do events.publish like this. And of course, because we can't spell, So let's say we publish an event, and we're going to call this event user.created, and we'll send it a payload of user name, and I'll say Jeremy here. Okay, so this will almost work, but unfortunately we have to make sure that we make this async because of how JavaScript works. Oops, sync like that. And then we would have to await this to happen here. And if we want to, we could always const and we can do result.
Sure.
And do this. And I know exactly. Oh, I'm terrible at it. And so anyway, so we can go ahead and send this, and rather than do that, we'll just go ahead and do console.log. By the way, this is the other cool thing I didn't really show, but one of the things that we do is we give you instantaneous or the streaming log support, right? So you can see what's happening in your logs when you run some of these things. So if I go back over here and I just I keep jumping to the wrong place, I'll refresh this. This will go ahead and fire off, and this gives me that event that it sent. So it just gives me an ID and some information about it. Now, I didn't have a listener, right? So there's no response to this particular event. But if I want to add a listener, then I can do events.on, and then I listen for user.created like this. That will go ahead and spit back an event for me. And I can just go ahead and log out that event like this. And now if I were to run this again, you'll get that event firing. And then as soon as that event gets processed, assuming that worked, you'll go ahead and see it. You'll see the event right there with the information that you need. Now, there's some cool things that you can do with events just to make things sort of easier on yourself. If you wanted to publish an event and you actually want to, I don't know why this isn't wrapping. It should be wrapping.
Okay, and I have questions for you. So when you get
go ahead. Yep.
All right.
Yeah. Go ahead. Ask me some questions.
So you kicked off an event. Okay. So when I kicked off an event, is that an internal bus queue topic, something internally here, or are you tapping into AWS services?
Yes, so we are tapping into AWS services, and the way that this essentially works is this is writing an event. Now we have a sort of a pattern that we use in terms of how we do events and how we do some granularity of events. Now we haven't implemented event bridge schedulers yet. So we use a combination of SQS and some other things, and there's some reasons why we do that. But essentially right now, this is an internal event bus, again, powered by AWS services, that gives you the ability to send messages within the app. So they're intra-app. But essentially the idea behind this is that we are expanding this so that they will be inter-app, so that you could actually do something like when you publish this event, maybe this is actually like service B, right? And you're listening for an event from service B, and it can go ahead and pick that up. So one of the cool features that we have, though, is just this delayed effect here. So you just use after, and I think I did the syntax right. But essentially, if I was to run this now, what I should get is, did that fire immediately? Probably did. I must have done. Oh, you know what? Is it in milliseconds? I might have gotten that wrong. But essentially, the idea here, I think it is in milliseconds. Let me try that. So if I go ahead and fire this off now, like this, and I'll load immediately. I must have done something wrong here, but essentially, I'm still learning how to use all this new stuff that we built. But the idea behind this is that essentially you can delay events, right? So you can use this as a way to delay the delivery of an event if you want to have it, scheduled in a particular time in the future. So similar to event bridge schedules, and there's some cool things that we're kind of doing around that. I know. What do we got for time? We've already been talking for half an hour. So,
we can go long if we need to. Here's my other question. I'm watching for other questions coming in here. I think I missed one. Someone said vanilla JavaScript really in 2023. They're making fun of you.
Of course,
I think it's crazy. But Jeremy's that good. But here's my question.
Who needs type checking? Come on.
Exactly. If I'm understanding correctly or clever, so this actually when you created the event, it kicked it onto an event bridge bus, right? Is what you said. Did it also on the events.on? Did that add? I just went Southern for a minute. Did that add an event handler to this Lambda function that then triggered this Lambda function again?
Yeah. So, and here's the important thing to remember. Actually, if you go into your app here and look, you should see that we now have an event that is showing up here, right? So as you add event listeners, So, and by the way, I realized why my my other thing didn't work because I put it after the event. You're supposed to put it before the event. But so let's say I create another one here, and I'll call like user dot deleted, like this, right? So now I create another event. So I save this here, and what this does is the way that our system works is it picks this up. So now we know, and this is going to be prettier, by the way, but essentially we know that there are 2 events that you're listening for. And this is what is so cool about how this works, by the way, is again, the handlers are sort of what pass the user or the behavioral semantics back into the system. So by us creating a user.deleted event here, and again, if I was to say, if this was, service B, user.deleted, all right, and I save this, then what this actually will do is this can pick up that, oh, this needs to listen to service B. So this will do all the wiring for you and reach out to service B and go ahead and create the listeners and all the rules that need to happen on Event Bridge for you. Like, it'll just do all that work for you, create all the permissions. Like, it's very, very, very cool stuff, right? So, so the idea behind this is that, again, how these actually get deployed, this is all going to be, you'll be able to see this, you'll be able to audit this if you deploy it to your own services. We've got, our own cloud that we can run these for you, and then eventually you'll be able to deploy this to your own AWS accounts if you want to. But so I mean, in terms of a couple of other things, and again, I know we're a little bit over, so I do want to show you something really cool. So we have, let's see, we have the parameters, we have the events. Oh, this is something that is just really, really cool as well. If you do schedule, let me see if that imported up there. Oh, it did automatically. Look at that. Amazing. So if you do schedule.every, for example, and you say every 1 minute, like this, and then this goes ahead and I know somebody who's watching this is going to be like, you did it wrong, because I did, because you have to name schedules now. So you can name schedules now. So this can be like, some cron that runs whatever, right? And then I go ahead and I can just do log, and then this is do something. All right, so now I created that schedule. That will go ahead and show up over here. Oops, I didn't mean to click on that. That was my bad. So that should show up over here as a schedule. But it didn't. Why not? What did I do? Schedule.every 1 minute. Yeah, it'll show up eventually. But essentially what this will do is, it actually ran. So this will run every minute for me. So every minute it was there and then it disappeared. I don't know what happened, but anyways, this is the magic of live TV. So this will create that scheduled task for you that will run every minute. You can also use cron. We're introducing some new things where you can do schedule.at, which will be more like, scheduling something for a one-off specific time. So schedules are pretty cool. You can do all of your, nightly ETL tasks or whatever you want to do there, or follow-up things, stuff like that. The other thing we have is data, but rather than me showing you data directly, I actually want to show you something really, really cool. So I'm going to exit out of this here, and I'm going to open or create a new project here, and let's call this Astro Demo. If I spelled it right, Astro Demo. Okay, so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to create a new project, and it'll just take a second because my machine runs so slow. J to open my terminal. So one of the cool things that we're trying to do with Ampt as well is full stack frameworks are incredibly popular. People love People love Next.js, they love Remix, they love SvelteKit. Astro is very, very cool. There might be some other ones that people love. Great. So what we did is, I hate when it does this, though. Not very good formatting. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and select the Astro Web Store example. So we'll call it Astro Demo. So this will take a couple of seconds to install because there's a bunch of stuff that you have to install for Astro to work. It has nothing to do with us. But this will install these dependencies. And essentially what this is doing is this created this astro.config file for you. And if anybody has used Astro, you should be very, very familiar with what this is doing. Oh yeah, that was awesome. It failed. Hopefully,
did you close it? Oh yeah,
it blew up my window actually. So let me try that again. Yeah, it should be good now, right? Hold on. Oops. Oh, look at that. It picked right back up where it left off. How about that? So the astro.config file, it's probably just because it's loading too much stuff. But essentially what this is doing is you're defining your config. Oh, wow. Hold on. This is just my machine, by the way, that's processing too much. This worked before I was streaming. I did this earlier.
Yeah.
All right, give this a second. So anyways, the point here is that while we're letting this actually do what it needs to do, these full stack frameworks are very, very cool because they let you do, SSR, or some of them do SSG as well. And it's great because you can do these server side things, but it also gives you this robust front end capabilities and do some really cool stuff. So I'm going to assume this is going to connect to my sandbox. I'm going to actually cancel out of it because I don't even know what state this thing is in right now. So let me cancel out of that and run this again. But essentially, and hopefully this will work and not blow up on me. But what we wanted to do with Ampt is we wanted to give you the ability to have those serverless capabilities where you could do really, really cool back-end serverless things like run ETL tasks or send events, or all these other things. I think Jones Zachariah Noel. Yes, please pray to the demo gods because
got your back.
It's yeah, exactly. I probably blew something up. Okay, this looks like it worked. But we wanted to give you the ability to have that super amazing front end experience, but also be able to do the back end stuff. Now this failed because, and this was expected. But essentially, if I go ahead and run build here, what this should do is this should actually build it using Astro, and then it will deploy this to my sandbox. And then what I should be able to do is I'll clear this out. I'll load my URL. Now, if I load this URL here, this is going to give me this this demo page right now because I have a static file in here, but essentially it tells you to go ahead and delete this file. So I'm going to delete this index file like this, and assuming that works, my machine is incredibly slow. Why did that not delete? Delete.
It's time for a remote VS Code, buddy.
I guess because this thing is super slow. Yeah. All right, now it's deleted there. Anyway, so that's synced. So now when I refresh this is going to go ahead and load this live version of the online store that is running in Astro. So now this is just running. I had to run a build, right? Because I wanted to get these files, these change files to build and run up on the web. So I can do that. Now, one of the things, there's no data here. And one of the cool things that we actually enable is the ability for you to quickly import data so that you can just reset stuff, right? So this is just a simple key value type thing. And all I got to do here is run import. And that'll automatically look for my data.json file. Now, again, I could do import, user.json, whatever. But what that's done now is that's now populated that data source that's specific for me. So when I refresh this will go ahead and load all of those products for me, right? And what's cool about this is that maybe I jump into Serial here. If I wanted to change this data, and again, I can change this data a number of ways. If I wanted to, I can go into my app here, go back to, let's see, Astro demo. I can go into this, go into my data, see all my data here, so I can actually jump into this. So if I wanted to edit this particular one here, I know it's a little small, but if I change this to serial 123 and then save this here, when I go back and refresh this will now be serial 123. But if I'm like, okay, I made some changes and whatever, but I want to reset that data, all you have to do is just import it again like this. That'll overwrite that data and reset everything back to what it needs to be. So if you are, making a bunch of changes and you need to get a state of your application, you can do that very, very quickly. But this process here, and again, I'll jump into the data maybe later, but the process here is a little bit clunky if I'm like, well, I want to actually change, the layout of this, or I want to, change the way the description here works. I have to go in here and I have to change, figure out where my page is. Okay, these are the products pages. Go into this Astro doc, go ahead, make some changes there, save it, and then run that build again. That's a lot of work. Like, I don't want to have to do that. So what we've enabled is while you're in your Ampt CLI, you just type in dev. And what that does is that actually will now run the local dev server for whatever full stack framework you're using. This gives me this local URL. So now I can go ahead and load my app locally, and it's actually pulling data from my live environment, right? So if I see that this says serial here, if I go back in to this, get all items, click on that one, go in and change this to serial ABC, make sure I'm in the thing there. I hit save. Now on my local version of this, right? If I refresh this, I'm going to see that serial ABC. So this is completely tied to the whole thing. What else is cool is this is actually proxied to the API. So this API, that there's this cart here, this is actually all being proxied through your developer sandbox, right? So there's a couple cool things that I can do. Now I can actually make changes pretty easily, and I can go in and say, you know what, this products page here, let's go to the products page, and actually where it says description, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to copy this here, and I'm going to bring in a description like this, and we'll just call it, if I can spell, description, like that. So now I've added that. Now, if I look over here, nothing's changed, right? But if I go over here and I hit save, right, or save here, this is instantaneous, right? This is that environment. That's that local amazing experience I get when I use SvelteKit or Next.js, that local thing. But all of my data and all APIs I'm calling, things like that, that is all calling from the remote system. So if I say now, look, serial ABC, let's go back into this data, this data.json over here. I want to take serial, and now what I want to do is I want to add a description. So I add description, hopefully I spelled it right, and I'll say, this is my morning serial, like this. I'll go ahead and hit save. Now that has updated that data.json, but I haven't pushed it up to my system yet. So if I refresh this page here, I'm not going to see anything. But the second I come over here and I type import like this, now that information is there, and immediately that's available in my app. So it's the super fast feedback loop. I mean, the whole point here is, like I said, get out of your way, right? And data is very, very cool. It's super simple, by the way. Like, you know, in terms of, let's say, probably show it here. Probably use data somewhere in here. I don't know. I didn't build this app, but anyway, it's in there somewhere. But essentially, data is very simple. It's data.get, data.set. It's all DynamoDB behind the scenes, right? Just gives you some simple ways to sort of deal with it. Yeah.
So when you do that import, it's loading data to DynamoDB.
It loads that, pulls that data and puts it in DynamoDB. And here's the other cool thing, right? Let's say that you made a bunch of changes and you've been, you know, updating things in your local environment or in your, you know, in your test environment here. And you say, you know what, I really want to save the state of this data. Then you can just go ahead and type in export like this and give it a name. And let's call it, you know, Sam state or something like that, .json, and then I can go ahead and export that. Now I get a SAM state here, and this will go ahead and export that data exactly as it was. And then if I want to change that and I want to bring it in, so maybe I have like 10 different versions or 10 different states of my app that I'm working on, I can go ahead and just run import SAM, this is what I call it, SAM state.json like this. Oh, I spelled that wrong. JSON like that. And I can go ahead and bring that in and update the information, right? So now I can say this is my afternoon serial. Save that, and then go ahead and bring in that, and that will go ahead and tell me that's my afternoon serial. And I'm like, oh, let me check. Oh, hold on, let me check it with the original stuff. So I import this, I go back and I check, okay, that's my morning serial. But again, this feedback loop of whatever you're building, it's just so fast and amazing. And again, there's a proxy here where it takes the API, and this is probably not going to work right because I don't know what the API call is, but yeah, so that particular is not found. But I also put in.
Yeah, you spelled Ampt.
Okay. Anyways, I spelled it wrong. But the point is that it's there. That API is proxied for you, and it gives you all that stuff. So then you essentially, so the whole point is, look, we want to make it as amazing as possible. I don't know if there's certain things that I missed here in terms of, you know, other things that it does. Oh, you know what I want to do? I want to show you one more thing if you've got time, because this is something super cool.
We're good on time, so yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I was actually telling you about this the other day when you and I were talking. So I'm going to close this one out. I'm going to go back to the demo one here, and I'll connect to this. And I am going to close these out because we don't need those. That we will probably need. Okay, so this is my heroic build one here. This one's there. Okay, so this is still running. Great. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete all of this, and I'm just going to save this and clear this out here. All right, I have a completely blank template here, right? Nothing fancy is running here. Actually, I'm just going to go into the static. I'm going to delete this page as well so that there's literally nothing in this system. So I showed you a couple of SDKs, right? A couple of things that we use just to make it super easy to sort of interface with this. Right now, if I was to go ahead and refresh this is just going to say nothing's found, right? There's nothing in the system. So one of the things that we wanted to do is we don't want this to be proprietary in terms of how you're building. That's why we want to get out of your way. That's why you can just bring in SvelteKit or Express or whatever. We have a couple of different flavors. We have an API we're working on that's or an API package that will be like web standards. So you'll be able to run it in like Cloudflare Workers and a couple of other things, but also will fit in nicely into the Ampt ecosystem. But one of the things that is really, really cool about the way that this was built, and this is Doug Moskrop all the way, super, super, super smart in terms of how this was implemented. But let's say we just use web standards, right? Add event listener, all right? Let's listen for a fetch event, right? And fetch events will go ahead and give us an event. Maybe we should call it fetch event so we know what we're talking about here. So this will go ahead and create a fetch event like this. And by the way, we don't expect anybody to do this. We're going to give you an SDK to make it easy, but this is what the runtime behind the scenes is doing. So right now, what this essentially is saying is anytime there's a fetch request, an HTTP request that comes into the system, this is going to respond with it, right? And then if you look up the docs, essentially the way that this works is you take a fetch event and you do a respond with, and then you create a new response. It's a little bit verbose in terms of how they built this, but it works really well. So then we have to JSON.stringify it, and let's return test true, something like that. Okay, so what we just did is we just created a fetch event listener, and then when that fetch event is triggered, which means an HTTP request comes into the system, we go ahead and respond with a new response that just stringifies this. So if we jump over to our interface here and we run that, it'll go ahead and respond with test true. Okay. Simple enough, right? And actually, we built a couple of cool things around this too, where you could do an HTTP event, listen for get, and say on an endpoint called test. And essentially what that does is this should return, I'm actually on test. That's why it's working. I was already there, right? So if this was test one, for example, like this, then this would just do a not found. And then if I was on test one, it would work there. But I'm just going to go back to our standard fetch event
blown
here.
away. I'm going to interrupt I am blown away by how fast you're updating the back end.
Freaking listen, cool. There's nothing compares to this. I'm just going to tell you right now. I like the work that the team has done to make this fast. And by the way, I was told it's going to get faster. So it's blowing my mind as well. All right. But anyways, let's talk about something really cool here. All right. One of the things that we see all the time is a complaint about cold starts, right? There's always that little cold start thing, right? Especially if your thing doesn't fire very often, if your a function doesn't fire very often. So what we were thinking is like, look, there's all these amazing powers in Lambda functions and containers and things like that, where you should be able to respond to an event or respond to a request and then be able to kick off some processing behind the scenes. So the way that we'd probably do this in Lambda is we would maybe kick off a asynchronous Lambda, call another Lambda function that runs some processing for us, or maybe we save it to a data, save it to DynamoDB, have a stream that works, something like that. There's all kinds of cool things that you can do to make that work. But what we wanted to do is make it even easier and just easy to grok. Now, again, like I said, we are going to build some sort of SDK on top of this to make it easy. But essentially, there's another thing that the fetch event has, and that is this function called wait until. So when we do a wait until, essentially what we need to do is we need to pass it a promise. So we'll pass this a promise like this. And then that promise takes a resolution or resolving object, whatever they call it. And then if we want to, I'm just going to go ahead and log out here. I'm going to say, let's see, delay triggered for now. Okay, so nothing super fancy. If I go ahead and I run this over here, then what should happen is I'll get it. Oh, I know why, because I didn't. You have to resolve promises, people.
That's right.
You have to resolve them. Okay, hold on. So now if I run it over here, I hit refresh there. This is going to say delay triggered instantaneously, and it should, because because again, I'm basically returning a promise that's resolving right away. But let's say that I actually do something like set timeout here. And again, this set timeout could be calling an API, could be writing to a database, whatever it's doing, right? It could be another fetch event that does something else. So I'm going to go ahead and do a set timeout. I'm going to just call res, and let's wait 3 seconds like this. All right, so now if I do this, it's still going to show delay triggered right away, but it's actually going to take 3 seconds to resolve this promise. So if I go ahead and add a .then, and then have this kick out another, oops, go do an arrow function. Have it do this. I'm going to go ahead and hit log that, and delay finished. I don't know, whatever you want to say here. Okay, so now what I've done is essentially said, and I'm going to do this so that we can see it at the same time. I'm going to, you know what else I'm going to do too, just so that it is a little more exciting. I'm going to add, I'll just hit time and do date dot now, like that. Okay, so what I've done is I now have a fetch event that is responding instantaneously with this request. Now, again, let's say that it's a Slack request, right? It's a Slack bot, and you need to respond instantaneously. So as soon as I trigger this over here, let me clear this. So as soon as I trigger this over here, this will immediately return and say that my data is triggered. So my Lambda function responded. And then 3 seconds later, I got this delay finished. So essentially what we've done behind the scenes, I think it's genius. Essentially, we use the inline processing from the Lambda function to return that first request. Then we pass any delayed processing into an extension of the Lambda function and use the processing time in there in order to do those things. So this is the perfect example for this would be you do something like a GET request or a POST request, whatever, to a Slack endpoint, right? And then you go ahead and you run that Slack here, right? And that immediately responds with. And by the way, you see how fast that is? I mean, it's so fast, right? It's just so fast.
Yeah.
So it's just really cool. I mean, and even more so the coolness of this, wait until, but this is really, the thing that we're trying to make sure people understand as well is this is all web standards behind the scene, right? So if you look at, fetch events and how all that works, I mean, everything from, what do you want to, like this here, the request.method, for example. Right. So if you wanted to go ahead and see what the method was here, then you can just do fetch event, and then probably put a dot in there. Will probably work better. And then when this is run, this will tell you, okay, that was a GET request, right? So very, very cool stuff in terms of, just having the ability to do this all behind the scenes and use these web standards if you really, really want to. And what we're hoping with this is that the web standards open up a layer of compatibility. So if SvelteKit and some of these other ones are running on web standards using event listeners and fetch and that kind of stuff behind the scenes, then those things will just work natively within the Ampt platform. So, yeah, I mean, so that was sort of a whirlwind, and I'm sure I didn't cover half of what I was hoping to cover. But yeah.
I will tell you that you've certainly got attention. We have a whole line of people. I'm ready for my invite. Immer's been taking care of him, so he's been jumping in there. And so yeah, this is exactly what I wanted, Jeremy. This is very cool. You and I spent Tuesday night in Australia last week with 3 hours pretty much talking about this, looking over the River Yarra, in which I commented, looks just like when you got home. It's the same view out your window,
with
right?
The 2 feet of snow. 2 feet of snow is a little bit different than the 80-degree weather in Sydney the other day. Yeah, so
it was so fun to call people back in Colorado and go, just so you know, it's 74 degrees here. That's Fahrenheit. I couldn't even tell you what that is Celsius. We decided we can't do that math, so we'll write an app here on Ampt to do that. Alex Bree says that dashboard is slick. Yes, it is. It's very cool. So it's a great demo. I'm super excited about this. I think this is next gen stuff and seeing what we're going to do with this. Man, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy. I appreciate you taking time to come on a demo. Tell them if they want to get involved, they want to be on it, what do they need to do?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of people on the wait list. We're pretty excited about the number of people that have shown interest in this. And I mean, I think we're trying to solve the pain point. You know what I mean? There's just a obvious pain point there of trying to do things more easily, right? Like building serverless applications is the way you should do this stuff. The problem is that it is complex and there's a lot of things to learn. We were talking about event bridge pipes the other day where it's like, yeah, that's great that you elevate maybe some of your payload translations or transformations into event bridge pipes, but now you're moving logic around and, and you're bifurcating that business logic. And there's the reasons why you would want to do that, but then trying to grok all of it and keep it managed is kind of hard. But anyways, go to getampt.com. So just getampt.com, sign up for the wait list. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Got it. And then we'll go ahead and start letting people. I mean, we've already started letting a few folks in. We're going to accelerate that. Again, we are really looking for learning. So nobody's building anything production on Ampt right now. There's a lot of things that a couple of kinks we want to work out. We don't want, there'll be some breaking changes and stuff like that we're doing. But really, I mean, some of the important things I think that we want to get across here is, we are giving you a developer sandbox for every app that you write, for every developer, right? So you can create as many of these apps as you want, as many sandboxes as you want, as many different, instances, preview, or I guess the permanent instances, preview branches. And of course, we have tie-ins to GitHub. And so, it'll automatically create a new instance on PR, on pull requests, on new branch creations and so forth, and do all the deployments. So all that automation stuff, all of that, CI/CD stuff, it's all built in, right? It's just, we're trying to eliminate as much of that as possible just to give you full control. But what's really, really cool about what we've done behind the scenes is this runtime that you see working here. Like right now, this is just running in a Lambda function because we don't want it to cost anything. We don't want you to have containers up and running while you're doing development, right? Like this is just, super simple. Everything is compatible with, sort of the production environment. But this runs in containers as well. So we can run this in Fargate. We can run it in App Runner. We can run it in an ECS cluster powered by Fargate. Eventually, we want to be able to run this in edge functions as well. And the goal behind doing that is to say, look, serverless is great, but sometimes when you get really high velocity webhooks or something that is using a lot of resources or needs to scale out a little bit more than how Lambdas would necessarily scale out, even if you're connected to RDS databases and using RDS proxy, there's a whole bunch of reasons why it makes sense. We can just go ahead and switch parts of your application over to containers or parts of your application into Fargate. So for example, when you write one of these schedule every one day or schedule.cron or whatever, if that's a long running process, we can spin that up in a Fargate container and you don't have to do anything. We'll just do it for you, right? So we pick the right tool to handle what it is that you need to do. So it's very, very cool. There's some learning that happens in there and some runtime telemetry that we look at to make some of those decisions. But yeah, the goal here is to just give you this easy interface and know that what gets deployed behind the scenes and which services we use and how things get wired together. We're going to do that following all the best practices, all the best standards, compliance, security, scalability, all built in for you. And for you as a developer, I mean, you're just writing code. You're just writing your Astro app. You're just writing your, you're just writing your Next.js app, whatever you're doing. And again, you have that full power of eventing and storage. I didn't even show you the storage piece. Like, again, this is just S3 behind the scenes here. But essentially you go into storage, you have the ability to do this programmatically. So there's a storage interface so you can bring things in and allow people to upload avatars or whatever, or you can generate PDFs, things like that. You also have a public folder. We give you the ability to load that. We give you a public URL. We give the ability to take all your private files and you can give them signed URLs for that and do that for you. So all of that stuff just comes out of the box. You want to build a static site or, you want to use 11T or something like that to generate a static site. I mean, seconds, and you're up and running with everything you need, fully scalable, fully secure.
So here's one of the advantages also, and I know we are probably wrapping up here in a second, but
sure.
Something I would say for those listening is, one of the things is, a lot of times we get cloud questions and the answer is, or AWS questions and the answer is, it depends. There's a lot of different ways to do things, and that's by design. That's, we don't apologize for that. We build a lot of power into a lot of these. There is overlap, things like that. But sometimes developers just say, tell me how to do it, or give me your opinion. And I think what you're seeing here is a very opinionated not framework, but application that helps you do that. I mean, obviously you'll have some freedoms to change things as well, but you're getting opinions from people who have been doing this for a long time, like a Jeremy, like an Imra, like a Matt, AJ. I mean, people I'm seeing here, Alex Debris, who've been doing this for a long time, who have a lot of strong opinions, and this is being kind of poured into this where you get to concentrate on the code. They're concentrating on the architecture, and I love that because it kind of it depends out of some places where you want it out of there, So
right.
Love it.
Right.
With that, we put in the link in there. And Jeremy, again, I want to thank you for coming. Thanks
for having me.
And Jeremy and I've talked about this. There's plenty of room in the space. We have another team.
Oh, absolutely.
Something
Yep.
that's not exactly the same. It's different. Same kind of idea, and that's Winglang, Monada, Elad, and Shai will be on with me next week. Talking about how their approach to this, because they also see they want to improve the DX. They want to get out of your way as well. So you definitely want to join us again next week to see that, Jeremy. I'm assuming you'll be there, So
yeah, I'll be there. Yeah, no, actually, I don't think. Did Matt harass me at all? I don't think he did. I think he was well behaved.
Yeah, he only harasses me. Yeah,
okay.
He only harasses
That's good to know.
Yeah, he likes you. He's mean to me. So,
and one other thing I'll say, about like Wing and Encore and Clotho. I mean, there's so many of these really, really cool ways that people are trying to sort of reimagine cloud. And I'll end with this. We look at cloud as this massive computer, right? It's a hugely distributed computer. It's globally distributed. There's all kinds of crazy things happening. But we're trying to build Ampt as like this operating system for the cloud, right? This thing that sort of sits between the developer and the infrastructure that runs behind it, and give you those features and those interfaces that make it really, really easy to use. Now, again, we are trying our hardest to stay away from forcing you to choose anything specific, right? So obviously we have events and we have some of these interfaces that we use. But even if you wanted to, even if you're using something that requires environment variables, we have a way to export those, and we're going to do some other cool things with that as well. But yeah, so look, there are so many. Let's just put it this way. Like, I know this show is like what, Sam and Friends or Sessions with Sam, right? So Sam is great. Serverless framework is great. Arc codes is great. Like, there's all these. CDK is very, very good for for building things in the cloud. But that is an approach in which it requires you to understand all of the different services that you need to use, how to wire them together, and to apply the same best practices over and over and over again. That's why there's all these white papers on, well-architected apps, right? And it is very, very difficult to do. And if you don't get it right, welcome to the club, because it is really hard to get some of these things right and make sure that they're compliant and secure and all these other things that they need to be. And there is a bunch of these, companies like Ampt and some open source ones as well, that we're just trying to reimagine this. We're just trying to take a different approach and see if there's a way and we can make developers more productive, make the cloud more powerful by opening it up to more people. So that's sort of the dream, the vision that we're doing here. And the most important thing is, look, we are using as many serverless services behind the scenes as possible, so that it just minimizes that operational overhead. I mean, look, AWS does operational excellence really, really well. Let them do that. You focus on building and running your app and and growing it. That's iterating as fast as you can.
And I love it, and I think it's well said. I used to have this hashtag called Serverless for Everyone. I think you remember I used to do it all the time. And I'll bring it back again, because the bottom line is we want you to use serverless. We feel like it's the best approach, and sometimes that actually right tool for right job. Sometimes that's serverless containers. Sometimes that's a Lambda function. Sometimes that's just integrated services. But anything that helps developers do this and gets out of the way, I like that approach. Then they're good with. We didn't get to all the questions. We need to roll off. But Jeremy, his let me get rid of this so you can see it. His Twitter handle is on there. Mine is on there. Yeah, I mean, we're easy to find on Twitter. Please ask us questions. Get on the waiting list as soon as you can. Join us next week for Winglang and see another approach at this. And Jeremy, I just want to say thanks again. And we'll see y'all later.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
All righty. Thank you. I'm going to take us out right now. Jeremy.